One great way for us to learn is to hear about the experience of others, and we've invited two of our presidents to join us today to chat a little bit about their journeys. Steve Caravati is the president of our Consumer Products Group, and Jeff Klingler is our president of Steel, and I would ask them to join me on the stage. Well, hi.
Hello.
Thanks for being here. So I'd love to start out just by having each of you kind of introduce yourself, but maybe just a little bit about how you got here.
I live here in Columbus, Ohio, New Albany. Been here about 7 years now with my wife, Heather, my two sons, Evan and Logan, who are juniors and seniors in high school. We're getting ready to send one off to college, which is a new experience for us and a little nerve-wracking. So my career here at Worthington, and I look around the room and I can see some people that I worked with many, many years ago, 25 plus years ago, almost 30 years ago, if I can believe it. But I joined Worthington at a very early age. I started in the production shop floor in Porter, Indiana, and spent a couple years out on the shop floor. And then my career path was I moved into sort of the back office roles, inside sales, production coordination, things like that. And then transitioned into outside sales, territory manager. And from there, I moved into different levels of management, sort of entry-level management roles, inside sales manager, and then moved into more senior roles and executive level management. So that's sort of my career path the past 30 years. It's been a long time.
How was the transition from the plant to coming into the office? How was that transition?
Yeah, it was scary, you know. So I'm not going to lie, I was not sure I could do it, but people were encouraging me to. I was and I still, you know, maybe to this day, you saw that slide with the fixed mindset and the open mindset. I'm very much fixed mindset, but I knew I wanted to be an open mindset person, and I knew I had to I had to, throw myself out there, bet on myself and push myself into that, into the uncomfortable zone. Not sure I was going to be able to do it, and I think, then after you do that a couple times, for me personally, that was exciting, right? That felt like winning, and I wanted to do it again. And so that first experience coming from the plant to the office kind of started that roller coaster, so to speak.
Cool. Steve, just give us your journey.
All right, Steve, can you hear me? Good?
Yep.
All right, Steve Caravati, President of Consumer Products, new position, as you all know, we realigned here last year. But I was born and raised in a small town about 2 hours northeast of here in Dover, Ohio. Probably not many of you have heard that, but it's about 20 minutes just south of Canton. Growed up there, and then had the luxury and was blessed enough to have the ability to play baseball at Ohio State. And through my ability there, I got introduced to an alumni gentleman by the name of Bill Wells, who had some connections here at Worthington Industries, and he has recently passed, unfortunately. But he was a big influence on getting me interviewed at Worthington with a gentleman who was head of HR at the time named Ike Kelly, who was a former football player at Ohio State. And when I got interviewed, I was prepping myself to be interviewed for steel. So I brushed up on all my steel information, knowledge, and he says, "You're going to cylinders." And I go, "Well, what the hell is a cylinder?" I have no idea what it was. So anyway, so started off there, and I was in a variety of roles. I was in inside sales for about a year and a half, and then got moved out to Boston to become a territory manager. I was out there for 3 years, and then had the luxury through organic and acquisition growth on the consumer product side to get moved back in as a national retail account manager back in 2009, and I have been in a variety of different positions within consumer since then. I live in Westerville, Ohio. I have a beautiful wife and 4 young kids, so I'm on the opposite spectrum of Jeff as he's seeing his kids off to college. I'm seeing my kids into school. So I have a 6-year-old daughter who's in kindergarten, twin 5-year-old boys who will be in kindergarten next year, and then a 2-year-old daughter as well. So when you ask me what keeps me up at night, you know what the answer is going to be everything. So I've been very blessed throughout my career to have mentors inside and outside of work, to be in the position that I am in today, and been lucky enough to surround myself with people who push me to do better and challenge each and every one of you to do that as well.
Cool. What would you, as an athlete, winning mindset meant something probably different then. How do you think about it now as the president of one of our companies?
Great question. So my winning mindset is just always getting better. And I mentioned, I use the terminology, and I know Jeff Gilmore, he uses the same terminology, which is being relentless, right? And that has a bunch of different meanings. But to me, it's always improving from yesterday because it's not good enough to just get to the top. You have to stay there. And I'm cognizant of that, being young in my career and making it as far as I have. There's always competition, whether if it's outside forces or internal forces that are going to push you to do better. And if you don't constantly and relentlessly try to improve yourself and the things you do and the people you surround yourself with, you're going to become stagnant in your life and in your career. And my wife feels the same way. So while we may argue sometimes about how much she pushes and how much we push each other, but at the end of the day, we all have the same goal and the same vision as a family, and we're willing to do whatever it takes to get there. And that requires some uncomfortable conversations and whatnot. But at the end of the day, we're one team. We're in it together, and we're constantly pushing each other in a positive way.
Cool. Jeff, how would you describe how you push people? What's sort of your approach when you're trying to get the best out of your team? How do you approach that?
I thought the last question was for me because you said being an athlete, what was my view on, but Steve just jumped right ahead of me.
I'm an ex-athlete, not current.
No, I think, there are a lot of ways. One of the best ways is literally is just to lead by example, right? Show the people that are on your team or the people that are around you what you're willing to do. And then also give them the latitude to do it, right? So you have to let everybody know that on your team that you trust them, and they all understand what the goal is, and give them room, give them the latitude to make decisions and make mistakes and learn on their own. I think that's the simplest way to achieve that.
Yeah. Steve, you have anything to add to that?
We talked about this during our QBR last month. We had a record quarter in EBIT. This business has had a record financial year every year for the past 12 years. Now, that's pretty amazing, right? And people always ask, when is it going to be good enough, right? And my answer to them is it's never going to be good enough because deep down, I believe in each and every single one of my team members more than they believe in themselves. And it's my job to ensure that they reach their fullest potential. And guess what? Nobody's there yet, not even myself. So it's never going to be good enough. We're constantly pushing each other, and again, in a positive way, to get better. Because that's the only way you set record earnings year after year after year.
So we have a diverse group here in terms of roles and responsibilities within the company, many individual contributors. As you kind of look out here at the audience and think about the skills you want to see developed in our company, do either of you have any that rise to the top that you think are areas where we might want to listen a little deeper about in terms of being focused on those skill sets?
Yeah, I'll jump in. I think, at this conference, we're going to talk about core competencies, right, at some point. And I think there are two that stand out in my mind that are absolutely critical, maybe more so today than they ever have been. And that's, the focus on our philosophy. As this company matures, and some of the people who started the company, worked with the company early on, we're very close to the philosophy. It's very important that we continue that core competency and put it at the top of the list. It should be part of our strategies. It should be part of everything we do. Kathy talked about managing through Kathy took on this role, and shortly after, as head of HR, COVID, a pandemic hit. I took on this role, and shortly after, same time Kathy, pandemic hit. And if we didn't have that philosophy guiding us through some of the very, very difficult decisions that we had to make as a team, it may not have gone as well as it did. And we literally referenced the philosophy during our many meetings when it was time to, unfortunately, downsize in some areas and make some hard decisions. We would talk about what the best decision was for the business, and then we would finish the conversation with, okay, what does the philosophy tell us to do in this situation? And how can we do a little more for our people than maybe others would in this situation? And so, that was a really good example for me. Just a reminder that it's always important to think about the philosophy when you're making critical decisions. And then the other one is, we have to stay focused on the customer. And I could go through all the core competencies, but those are two that I think are very important because especially in today's world, we're working more remote. We're not together as much as we used to be. It can be easier to lose sight of some of the things that are important. We're not having as many, informal conversations as we used to potentially, and that spontaneous collaboration, and a lot of that has to do with the customer. And so we have to find ways to continuously, whether you're dealing directly with the customers or not, you always have to think about the customer and what we're doing to service them and continuously getting better. And then the philosophy. I think those are two things that stand out.
Great. Steve, you want to comment?
Yeah, so for me, it's emotional intelligence, which I know you're going to hear a lot about tomorrow. And then a subcomponent of emotional intelligence is self-awareness. As you continue to progress in your career, there's going to be more people watching you, watching what you do, what you say, how you act. And it's important to have that self-awareness to make sure that you are living by the philosophy and you're doing what you said that you're going to do. And then the other piece of that is social intelligence. And that, to me, taps into the part of the brain that is empathetic, and it puts you in touch with the rest of the company. Because if you don't know what's going on out there, and if you have tunnel vision, and you only listen to a few subset of people, then you're going to miss out on what's actually really going on and how people feel out there in the company. So I think those are two very important components that I think are going to help shape the future of this company, in addition to the two that Jeff talked about.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm going to ask for questions too, so be thinking if you've got any. Well, we've got these guys here. Love to hear your questions too. So when we think about a culture of development, which this company has always put training and learning and development at the forefront, what are, we talked about competencies, but what do you think are some of the key areas? I mean, Jeff, you talked about the philosophy, and we talk about that a lot. 67 years with the company, we can't allow the philosophy to be interpreted in ways that aren't perhaps the intent, and we've got to continue to make sure that everybody that comes into the company understands it. But when you think about skill sets and you think about these folks putting their journeys together, what comes to mind? Is it financial acumen? I mean, is that something that they need to be focusing on? You guys talked about some of the things that are really important in terms of emotional intelligence, which underscore big time on that one. But we're at an interesting time in the company's history in terms of the folks that we're attracting to the company, and kind of where we want to go with both of our businesses, or all three of our businesses.
I'll go first, Steve, if you want. That's a great question, and I think I want to be careful how I answer this, because if you're in a certain discipline, whether it's a finance role or an HR, my answer doesn't mean that you need to shift careers, okay? That's okay. I think even for professionals in those specific careers, however, I think it's important. Kathy, you mentioned, should I be focused on my financial acumen? Should I learn more about operations? Should I learn more about it? Yeah, the answer is yes. So go try different things, do different things, and add to your toolkit the knowledge that you gain from, whether it's go try a stretch assignment for 2 years or be part of a stretch assignment that's maybe temporary, get involved in different business units. If you're a commercial salesperson, you need to find a way to learn more about the finance side. So you have to broaden your own horizons. And so whatever that is, and go seek it out yourself. Don't wait for somebody to come to you. So go seek out those different areas that you're interested in, and that all of that is going to help you in the career that the professional position or the career path that you want. So just broaden your horizons, whatever that means.
What did you do when you first got into the business? I mean, I would imagine you were trying to sit in on meetings, because that's how you learn, when you're around other folks.
Yeah, so great question. Another one, and I think today there are mentors here for some of the newer folks or folks that want one, even senior folks, an assigned mentor, right? That's great. Take advantage of that. But like I said, I alluded to earlier, when I got into my first role in the business, I didn't know anything, and I had to learn everything, and I wanted to be really good. So I went and suck out people that wanted to help me, and I made it apparent to them that I wanted to learn. And you strike a relationship, a genuine relationship with those people, and they help teach you. So, you know, you go into a new role, you have to you have to want to learn, you have to want to win, you have to want to do more than what's required. And I think if you do that and you go seek out those people and you know, sort of plot your own destiny, that's how you do it.
Steve, how do you learn? How do you go about learning about something? I mean, you guys are doing all kinds of different things in the consumer products group, just really, you know, reaching out beyond what we've been comfortable with in the past. But how do you learn about new markets, and how are you spending your time strengthening your understanding on these things?
Great question. You don't know what you don't know. And, you know, this business in particular, the consumer side, for so long, we've been a part of cylinders, and we were homegrown, coming up from inside sales all the way up to, you know, the general manager position. And we didn't know really anything about consumer products. So we brought people in who had the expertise in that particular area, and then all of a sudden now we all are becoming more educated in consumer products. So I think listening to your team is extremely important. I am not the smartest guy in the room in my team meetings, because if I was, then I got bigger problems to worry about than just what we're meeting on. But I think it's vitally important that you surround yourself with people who are subject matter experts and you listen to their input and feedback and criticism. And I tell my team this, that the difference between feedback and criticism is just how you hear it, right? Do you hear it as somebody who's trying to critique and criticize what you're doing, or are you going to take that as an opportunity to improve yourself? And we operate in a safe enough space within our business that we can tell somebody when, hey, this isn't not to criticize you, but this is what we're seeing you do, and we need you to change. And that person is always receptive to it. It might not be what they want to hear, but they take it as, again, feedback as a gift, and then they go and apply it. But I couldn't agree more with Jeff's comments, particularly around, you know, crafting and creating a vision for yourself and your career and your personal life. Because if you don't have a vision for where you want to go, whether that's in, again, your professional life here at Worthington or at home, how can you expect somebody to see that for you? So it's important that you know where you want to go, where you want to be, and then put the tools in place that are around you to help get you there.
Awesome. So would love to hear your thoughts, maybe your philosophy on, you know, you've got a great star player, Steve, in your group, and there's a need in the steel group, and this person thinks, maybe I want to try going over to the steel group. You know, you might be inclined to say, don't do that, stay with us. But, you know, just what's your philosophy on that in terms of expanding your horizons, maybe learning other parts of the business, parts of the company, and how do you make that happen? How do you do that?
Yeah, and what I'll tell you is that I never pigeonhole anybody in my team. So if they have aspirations to go on to another business unit or a different division, 100% supportive of that. Now, what they will do is they'll ask me for my advice, and I will be very candid with them and tell them the pros and cons of doing that and let them make their own decisions. But by no means am I going to say or tell Jeff, no, you can't reach out to a specific employee because they're mine. I never want to hold anybody back. It is our job as leaders to make sure that people are put in the best position possible for a promotion, whether that's in your business or not. There just might not be an opportunity within the business that they're in today to move up, and that's fine. But that's why you develop them for opportunities in other businesses, and that'll expand their knowledge. And as you think about leaders that are coming up in the organization, a lot of them have diverse backgrounds in terms of working in different functions within the company.
Mm-hmm. What's the toughest people decision you've had to make, Jeff, in your time as the head of Steel?
In my career, or my time at Head Steel?
Well, answer it any way you like.
You know, anytime you have to make a decision that negatively impacts somebody on your team or somebody in your business is always the hardest thing you have to do. And, you know, there's not much more I can really say about that, but, you know, a lot of us in this room have had to make some of those hard decisions, what's best for the team and what's best for the business, and those are just the worst decisions you ever have to make. Again, the important thing to remember there, and I guess what you know, keeps us going, is we always do it in a way that is respectful and within, you know, the guidelines of our philosophy, and we treat people, even in a bad situation like that or a difficult situation, we still treat everybody the way we want to be treated, and that's, the most important part of the philosophy is good or bad situations require us to treat each other just the way we want to be treated. And again, that's doing more than is required, and I think that's important.
Thank you. Steve, in your pathway to become the president of Consumer Products, was there ever a time that you maybe got pushed into a role that you weren't necessarily gunning for, but you kind of had to say, okay, I'll do it? Maybe describe what that was like and how you got through it.
Yeah, so I was director of sales for 3 or 4 years within Consumer Products, and then they kind of restructured to where they had these product director positions. So I went from overseeing all of the sales piece of it to just managing 2 product lines, which was different and unique in Worthington's history because we've never really focused on the product side of it, even though I was knowledgeable because of all the years that I spent in consumer. But it was just a shift in what I was doing, and I didn't necessarily agree with it because in my mind, again, I had a vision of where I wanted to go and how I was going to get there, but this was kind of a sidetrack way of doing it. And I embraced it because I got more knowledgeable on the operations front, and where I wasn't as knowledgeable on the operations front before because I was sales driven. But then I just gained a whole new appreciation for what goes into the operations piece that just helped round out my career and get me ready for the next position that was, in a few years later.
Kathy, I want to jump back, just to add on to something Steve said earlier about, letting people go that are on your team. As some of you are already in leadership positions, some of you aspire to be, but when other departments, other businesses within the family are asking to talk to your people on a continuous basis, that's winning. You're doing your job. Your job is to promote your team, and that's a good test to know you're doing a really good job. So
excellent. That'll be quoted in the brochure, I'm sure, later. Thank you for that. Before I see if we've got audience questions, I'd love for each one of you to kind of summarize how you're feeling about things within your business. I think everybody would love to hear. I mean, we talk a lot in our SLT meetings about everything that's going on and the fact that we are a reimagined company heading in a lot of great directions. And despite the fact that we're 67 years young, there's still a lot of good ahead of us and better days ahead. So I'd love for you each to give us a kind of a recap of how you're feeling about things.
I'll kick it off. In steel right now, there's a lot of excitement, a lot of activity in a couple different areas. If you're at all aware of what's happened in the steel market in the last 12 to 18 months, it's been historic. Okay, we've seen steel prices rise 4 times what they were in the summer following the pandemic, and then subsequently drop faster than we've ever seen prices drop in history. So a lot of volatility, a lot of unknown, but it's been exciting because it's been fun to watch our team take advantage of those opportunities. Big challenges in rising prices for a lot of reasons, and our customers as well, but really exciting to watch everybody jump in and make the best out of a difficult situation, and it's driving our results. So we're going to have a really good year, a really great year, and then on top of that, we've been very active in the M&A front, which steel has not necessarily been very active there in quite a while. Really, in the past 3 years, we've made 3 acquisitions. The most recent was Temple Steel, which expands our product offering, which is very exciting into the electrical steel lamination market. They're the 2nd largest in the world, and that was the largest acquisition that Worthington Industries has ever done. They've been on our target list for at least Tim Adams has probably been talking to them for 10 years or more. So it's really obviously that's been a great addition to the team, to the steel business. And then Shiloh was another one. Just this fiscal year, we got 2 fairly large ones done. Was a very large competitor. TWB's, I think, their largest competitor was Shiloh, with 3 locations that process laser welded blanks, and then 1 location that's very much like our core steel business in Bowling Green. So another $120 million acquisition. So very large. So we're growing very rapidly, maybe more rapidly than we ever have before, or at least since I've been around. So growth is exciting, and it creates a lot of energy and a lot of momentum, and so
And other opportunities too for folks?
That's the most exciting thing is, especially with Temple, because that is a different product line. So it's flat roll carbon-based steel. We're familiar with it, but it's a totally different market, totally different set of customers. Even though there's a little overlap, totally different sales process, different processing. So it's a really unique opportunity for our people to grow and to maybe take on a new challenge in something that's completely different, but it's part of the Worthington family. So very excited about that as well, and expand their knowledge for a different product standpoint. So.
Great, thanks. Steve?
Yeah, consumer's been doing fantastic. We're going to have another record year financially this year. Just in the past 3 years, we went from $86 million in EBITDA to 104. We're going to do about 128 million this year. And to put that into perspective, I think the record EBIT from a combined cylinders perspective was 128. And consumer's going to do that this fiscal year, which is just amazing. But I think what I'm most proud about with my team is that, even though we're setting records, it doesn't feel like we are, which is great because there are a lot of challenges that we have within the business. Talk about operations and trying to find employees and retain them and hire. That's a challenge. We're facing a lot of legislative challenges around EPR, or extended producer responsibility. That's putting an emphasis on sustainability with our products, in particular our non-refillable products that we're trying to fix and to come up with a solution. There's always competition entering our space each and every day, trying to knock on our door. So there are a lot of things that the business sees as challenges, but they view them more as opportunities to improve what they're doing today. So all in all, I think the outlook is great for our business. We acquired General Tools and Instruments last year in February. We're on the heels of making another potential acquisition here in the next 30 or so days, so we're expanding our footprint within our tools platform, and we're constantly looking to reinvest back in the business. Jeff Gilmore gave a great change story last week where he talked about all the investments that we're doing in the businesses, and consumers going to be investing over $75 million in the next 5 years just in our operations to improve the way we produce products. So SLT, the board, believes in our businesses, and we couldn't be more happy for their support and letting us, and giving us the latitude to continue to run our businesses.
Cool. Who has a question out there? Somebody? Right over here. Patrick? Or where is somebody with the microphone? Oh, here we go.
We can hear you fine.
Okay.
I just can't see you.
Okay. It's just me. It's really not that important to see me. Interesting about all the talk of the philosophy. I truly believe it is core to Worthington, but it can be a catch-all. You say the philosophy but mean different things at different times. So, and especially with what Kathy said earlier about new generations coming into the company, I would love to hear more of your perspective about how do you interpret, how do you help bring the philosophy more to life, or what does it really mean instead of just a catch-all phrase? And how do you help defend that against, or make it relevant for the generations that are coming? I mean, there's some, no offense, there's some generational tension between the two of you.
As the more senior person, I'll go first. That's a great question, and you're right, it is a catch-all. And I think the way, first of all, it's been around for quite a long time, and it's been relatively unchanged since the day it was written on the back of a napkin, right? Mm-hmm. So that tells you one thing. It's very relevant, and it's pretty simple too. They're not like complex thoughts or ideas that are not. They're relatively easy to understand, right? So people can relate to them, and they're values, right? It's a set of values that we can subscribe to. I think that makes it very relevant today and in the future. And then all of us as leaders have a responsibility to talk about it. And that's how you keep it alive and you reference it, like I did earlier. We talked about having to make hard decisions about people, plants, or equipment, people or plants, things that impact people's lives. You reference the philosophy when you talk about those things. That's just one example. But that keeps it relevant. That helps people understand. How do you apply the philosophy to that horrible situation or that difficult big decision? Well, just talk about it and apply the appropriate portion of the philosophy to the decision or the situation, and that just becomes the way people think. Does that answer your question, Steve?
I'll take a stab. So for me, it's actions speak louder than words, okay? And I'll use DE&I as an example. And Adrian, you're my boy, I love you. But when we talk about DE&I, are we doing it to check a box to say, hey, come work at Worthington because we're diverse and inclusive, when in reality, are we really? Because we're not doing anything about it. So when we talk about doing what we say we're going to do and actions speak louder than words, that to me is the same way with the philosophy. Are you actually doing what the philosophy card says and using DE&I as a microcosm of that? But I think it's vitally important that you have to do something and be intentional about it, because then you get credibility. When you get credibility with your team, with the employees, you get buy-in. And then when you get buy-in, then all of a sudden people are coming and mirroring exactly what you're doing, and then that'll make the business and the company thrive for another 67 years.
Do you have somebody over here?
Thank you. Jeff, you earlier spoke a little bit about your transition from the plant level to the corporate level. I wanted to inquire about the transition from more the floor level to the office level and how those compared and how they differed, and your approach, how those compared and differed from each transition.
So if I understand your question, you want me to compare and contrast going from the production floor in the plant to the office, and then from those roles into a corporate role?
Right.
Okay. Not very different at all, in the sense that, in any case, in any one of the cases along my entire career, I'm not afraid to admit, I felt like I was, stretching and putting myself out there, and certainly outside of my comfort zone. And I talked about that earlier. And so those transitions were just very similar in the sense that I was going into an area I wasn't sure was going to be the right fit for me. I wasn't sure if I could actually do the job. But I was, if you're going to bet on anybody in the world, you want to bet on yourself because you can control that. And so that's what I did. And looking back, it was a lot of fun. So, going to learn something new, and that was what was driving me. I wanted to learn something new, try something new, and every time I made that transition, I felt like, okay, this is what I want to do. And after a couple years, then I would say, well, I think I want to try that. And I would, I don't know if I can do it. I'm not sure it's right for me, but it looks fun, and I want to do it. So throw yourself out there and bet on yourself, and that's it. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I hope it does.
For the most part, I think more so I was thinking more along the lines of where you were in your growth path and your mindset then versus your mindset later on, if that makes sense.
He can't think back that far.
It's been a long time. Yeah, I think, as you move along through your career, maybe this will answer it, you move from, being in a role where you're doing a lot of things and you're responsible for accomplishing a lot of things personally and within your team. And then as you move along, then you become dependent on people to do things. And your job goes from, being a contributor and being a team member to, ensuring you have the right people on the team and making sure that team dynamic and the culture of that group and the group is correct. So you transition, yes, from relying on yourself to relying on others and making sure that the team is the right team.
We're going to wrap it up here. I'd like you both to finish this sentence. Worthington is a company that gives you
The opportunity to do whatever you want.
whatever. Just a line. It could be a line. It could be more than a word.
Gives me the opportunity to become better. Can I get in the?
You both win. How about a round of applause for our two presidents? Thank you, guys.